All you hoes, you and your mammy and your granny too. I'm sick of this shit. All you hoes don't give a damn what you wanna do.
Chaos.
They like the chaos.
They like the chaos. So when you're able to
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Must reign.
Yes. Welcome, guys. Welcome to another stream, another live stream here on the Chaos Reign channel. I am Chaos Reign. And as you know, you see the thumbnail, see the title. Cut to the chase, I get straight to the point. This is the final part 2 of the one Andrew Wilson on the left-hand corner versus the Miss Anne. And her real name is actually Miss Anne. Surprisingly, the vegan leftist feminist. And their conversation, as you know from the description of the title below, of the patriarchy, feminism, and all this glorious labels, we have the conversation which is really better, which one's preferable, and which is undoubtedly the future of where things need to be. So no further ado, I'll run the other part of this tape. I stopped at a point in a period, and I'm going to go as far as I could take it on today's stream. But you guys be a judge. And like always, leave your comments and thoughts on this with commentary. So let's begin.
Ultimate arbiter of goodness, which I would add that asterisk on the end that, like, no, I'm the ultimate arbiter of my moral values and my goodness. I mean, that's
now Andrew's question about the goodness and her views, and he's really pressure on how she thinks and her views. And personally, I don't give a crap personally, because I hear enough from the first hour. If you didn't catch the first broadcast, you can go back on this channel. But I think when we talk about challenging and having this conversation, there is really no good faith in how to go about this. I mean, at times it's going to be intellectual, sometimes it's going to be fuckery. At the end of the day, this conversation need to be had regardless, because people that's coming behind us are not going to have these redundant conversations, in my opinion. In the future, I think people either you're going to be this way or this way. There's no in between. So I'm going to let it play on. Let's go.
that's fine. That doesn't bring us anywhere else. I can still look at people and go, the things that they're doing don't match up with my values, and that to me is bad.
Yeah. And one thing, please like, comment, subscribe, like always. And guys, let's hear what's your thoughts in the chat right now. Participate now. And if you have a serious question, you can put in a super chat if you choose to. Let's go.
Yeah, but what my claim is that it would have to then necessarily be, and at least it seems to be from all the questions you've answered, that if they don't match up with your values, that is what is bad, and only things which match up with your values are what is good, and nothing else is good.
To me.
And well, but
I don't disagree. Do you think
if
that
it's only focused on you, who else could it be focused on?
Do you think? Well, those people have their own values, and to them, things are good. So to them, those things are good. To me, those things are bad, and they don't meet my values.
Okay, got it. So then, when we're talking about duty, right? And here's my claim. Then, I think that duty to materialism makes things bad. That's my claim. I think that, or I'm sorry, materialism itself generally makes society worse for people to live in. And so I'm going to try to appeal to your values here and ask you, Do you think that materialism itself is good for society? Or do you think it's bad for society? The way that I framed materialism,
Material goods can be fulfilling.
that the movement towards materialist goods being fulfilling over other things like duty is bad for society.
I'm not sure what it means to have something like a material good. Maybe you can give me an example of that, a material good being over a duty or something like that. What do you mean?
A material good being over it? Well, so
Right.
a duty or a value of a duty be some type of conception of a thing that you feel you must do, even if it doesn't give you any sort of pleasure. There's nothing that you gain from this, right? Generally, materialism is the opposition to the pursuit of material things for the purposes of pleasure or fulfillment or something like this, right? These would be the distinct differences. So duty is not actualizing some pleasure center necessarily. So it's an obligation you feel like you have. So a good example of a duty would be like, you have a child, right? That you're in charge of. Let's say you're babysitting or something like that. You have some sort of duty to make sure this kid is fed, even if you have a bad headache, or even if it causes you pain, or even if you don't like doing it, right? The pursuit there is something greater than yourself, not just to material goods.
So this is an empirical claim.
Before she goes on her babble, you are aware, Andrew, that most majority Western women don't believe or is their obligation to carry out duties in regards to keeping a harmonious relationship going. You come in as a man fully devoted, even go as far as 100% of everything. Anything less than 100%, she'll view or deem not worthy of her time or attention, even go as far as think that you're doing less. And that means she will have to veer off and look for other mates if she's not doing ready. If you're not putting 100% of this. Do not be fooled that you hear a lot of women say that they always in relationship putting 100%. No, they're only putting not even a fraction. If I had to give a guess how much in regards to relationships or even let's call it marriage, women contribute, I would say 25%, roughly, and maybe less. And the reason why, because in their mind, they feel you need to bring everything, do everything, while in return, they don't really give you much or nothing at all. And that's just the plain truth. Yeah. Anyhow, let's hear her babble.
As to whether or not it would be good for society. And it seems like you're kind of
Why would it be empirical?
intermingling. Well, I can answer that question, but it seems like you're intermingling the idea of materialism with subjectivism. So if we say like, the pursuit of material things is good for society overall versus people believing that they have some duty outside of themselves, outside of their values or something like that.
Yeah, well, what I'm drawing is a contrast between how people lived pre-feminist, which was in smaller societies, smaller communities, where duty was something which was focused and pushed on, versus a modern materialist society where duty is not a thing which is pushed out at all, not by modern feminists at all. This is the contrast that I'm showing.
I actually would disagree that like feminists, at large or something like that, probably don't say that you would have duties. Like, I think that like feminists think that like women shouldn't essay other women. I think that they believe that women have that duty, whether or not they're talking like a subjectivist or whether or not they're talking like an objectivist or something like that. I think that they do believe those duties exist. And that is another empirical claim as to like what they actually believe. But if we're talking about my version of feminism, right? Like my version of feminism would say, hey, I think that, because of my values, I think that you have reasons to do X, Y, Z. I think you have, reasons to go vote. I think you have reasons to, whatever.
Okay, so I think that it's fair for you to hyper-focus on your version of feminism. Obviously, I'll start caveating questions with under your version of feminism, is this true? Because otherwise I don't know. Under your view then, this argument may be moot. Do you think that women ought to have some duties to society?
Some duties in under my worldview, yeah. I think that women should do things that are good for society per my values.
What?
Okay, but why women today are not doing that? Should be a question, Miss Ann. Have you noticed that the government, because they have to really know of a drain, a resource, they already conclude that putting women in certain positions that is not beneficial to the United States government in the long run. And how we know? Because how much they had to cut back and subsidize the economy in the States. Are you aware of this, Ms. Ann? I mean, these are things that's rumored what's going on right now, especially the evictions, and they now cut back in jobs that really, we could say it's not really necessary now in a high technical age right now, especially it's repetitive. So what really, if you think about it, what really responsibilities or things women really hold society? And we can't go beyond baby making because that's a given. That is really standard. Do you always know that carrying babies for 9 months is standard? Y'all aware of that, right? I'm just saying. Fairies. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I think women should vote.
They should?
Yeah.
Or they should have the right to vote?
Well, I think both things can be true.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm just
sure.
asking, should they actually go vote? Do you think they should go do that?
Yeah, I think that women, oh my God.
Like, do they have a duty to do that?
That noise is so loud. Do they have a duty to that? Would I prefer them to? Yeah. I would prefer them to go vote.
So they have a duty to vote. Should there be any consequences if they don't vote?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, so there's no enforcement of any duty there.
No legal consequence, no.
Okay, so then I guess what duties should women have where there's an enforcement behind it? Like, you don't do this duty, there's a consequence.
Yeah, the same types of ones that men have. So if you have a child and you don't take care of it, you leave it malnourished, I think that you have a legal duty to do that. You should be punished in the same way that a man should be.
Okay.
So that's one example.
Okay, so they have some ethical duties. What about societal duties?
Well, that would be a technical societal duties. Maybe I'm not clear what you're looking for.
Oh, I'm just looking for, like, jury duty's a duty, literally, right? As his name implies.
Sure.
That's like a civic duty or
I
a
think
social duty?
they might have a legal duty to do that. Now, do they have like
Yeah.
a moral duty? Are they doing something like
Correct,
bad
right.
to
That's
me?
why I'm looking at,
I'm like,
is there a distinction there between the ethical and the civic duty? So I'm just asking, what duties do you think women socially should have in society?
legally or ethically?
Legal, or, well, both, actually.
Well, those are going to be two different answers, right? Like,
But
I
let's
think,
start with legally then.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, they could be things like legally, I think people should be held to go to jury duty. Legally, I think that people should be, prosecuted for crimes. I think they have a duty not to commit crimes against
Okay.
other people. And that's both an ethical and a legal one. Mm-hmm. But the ones that apply to men generally too. So I'm not sure what this question is getting at.
Do men have a duty to protect women?
Sure.
Okay.
I think people have a duty to protect other people when they can.
Do women have a duty to protect men?
Yeah, when they can.
When they can, as they can. Okay.
Of course.
And this makes society good, right?
But how are women in society, and let's say if we want to go by that, have a duty to protect men? What steps, what measures, what they do in regards to protecting men should be the question. I hope Andrew's really pressing on these questions to her, because these are questions you have to really tackle when you really have a debate in regards to the significance and importance of men and women, especially in the roles of society. Are you supposed to protect their self-image? Are you supposed to protect in regards to verbal abuse from other women? Or are you really protecting, or you as a lady, you should protect men in regards to women that will do deceivious and very much how can I say this? Very fraudulent ways. Meaning that, if you find a woman that's going to use a man for money, or even go as far as will use him and use a baby as hostage, you should step in and protect the man in regards to that. I mean, these are things that I would lay out as questions: what you protect the men, if it is your sole rightful duty. All right, let's go.
Yeah, I
better.
think people protecting people, it makes a society good.
Okay. Do women have a duty to not be promiscuous?
To not be promiscuous?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by promiscuous?
Have sex with lots of different partners?
That I'm not sure of. I don't know if people would probably say no.
I'm asking you.
I'm not sure. The answer was I'm not sure.
You're not sure if they have that duty?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a duty to society to not, sleep with multiple partners.
Do they have a duty not to do sex work?
That one would hinge on some empirical facts, like maybe if it caused like a lot of negative outcomes or something like that, and maybe like the benefits didn't override those negative outcomes. That might be one reason why I would say like, okay, well, they do have a duty not to do sex work.
Do they have a duty to stay with their husband even against their own happiness for the sake of their children?
I would probably say no in a lot of cases.
Why not?
Because I think that infringes on people pretty severely when you're in a scenario like that. There could be some negative outcomes for kids. Once again, that would be an empirical claim. That, like, the answer to that would hinge on some empirical facts.
So if I were to give you empirical facts, and of course, during this little 2-hour debate, it's going to be impossible for you to go through any empirical data I would give you in a very, wide overview, right? But if you were given facts then that if women did stay with their husbands, even if they maybe fell out of love with them, they didn't really like him that much anymore, right? Or they really just didn't want to participate in the marriage, but they had children with him, right? And we saw the outcomes for children were way better if they stayed, even if it was at the expense of their happiness. Would you then advise women to stay?
That depends on how much of a toll on their happiness it would take. I think falling out of love with someone...
Let's say it takes a big toll on their happiness.
I'm not sure that that's something I can give you an answer to, whether or not they have some ethical duty to do. That is probably going to be a case-by-case thing. I would have to look at, okay, well, how miserable is this person staying with this person, and how much of a benefit is it going to give their kids? And do they have access to the knowledge of how much benefit it'll give their kids to stay?
So you don't know?
But marriage was never constructed for happiness. And I think for all religious books, including the Torah, the Quran, even the Bible itself, it never states about when you're going to be in a marriage or actual union with or without the state. They never said that you're going to be happy. Happiness is something that you have to find within yourself. I'm not sure why this is a big issue in regards to the happiness side of things, that you need to be happy to really stay and do anything. This is why men do we do fare better and take a lot of crap when it comes to marriage more than women. And I think no fault divorce doesn't make it easier in regards to this marriage dynamic we have in the West. Personally, I think that if you have kids, and this is my thing, I'm very strict on this about how to go about this. And I might do a segment in a book in the future maybe about this. I have content that covers this. That how things should go, right? At best, if you have more than one kid, you want to at least give the kid at least until they're fully adults before you decide if you want to remain or go from the so-called union we call marriage. Overall, that would be the best, so they see something to work on. They see you and your husband, having their disagreements, but it doesn't get violent or disgruntled. Your children should not really be seeing it, but if they do see it, you gotta explain to them so that it's a learning experience with your children when it comes to you and your mate. But anyhow, I'm not gonna rant on. Let's keep going because this is gonna be a long stream. So let's keep going.
I think in the general cases, they don't have an obligation to say, because I think the type of things that lead to divorce are pretty severe. And in a lot of cases,
it's usually irreconcilable differences, not severe.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it's severe usually, actually. I think the things that lead to divorce or irreconcilable differences are not abuse. And it's not even money usually. It's just falling out of love. They just don't like this person, or I don't like their habits anymore, or things like this. But
I'm not sure. I'm not sure falling out of love is always reconcilable. In fact, that sounds kind of miserable to try to force yourself to love someone.
You're not asking it to reconcile and fall back in love, but whether or not they have a duty to stay with their husband for their children, for the sake of their children, because their children get far more desirable outcomes if they do.
Right, but I think that there's probably something empirically there. There's probably a lot of distress that it causes somebody to stay with somebody that they don't love and to not pursue somebody that they would in fact love.
I agree. It causes them distress. That's right. What duty does, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes you have duties
to things which cause you
distress. Yeah.
I'm just making an estimate that no, they probably wouldn't have an obligation to do that.
Now, you've dove into the stats then, so you know probably that when it comes to abuse of children inside of the home of single mothers, are you aware of where that usually comes from?
Where the abuse from single mothers comes from?
For the children.
Sorry,
the
I'm not sure what the question
children
is.
in single mother homes, the abuse rates that happen to them, do you know where that usually comes from?
You might just have to give the answer. I'm not sure what you're
Okay,
asking.
so here, easy. Kid gets abused inside single mom home. Who usually abuses them?
I would assume the parent or other siblings.
No, it's usually, see, in these cases, it's most often step parents in single mother homes.
Okay.
Right? Puts them far more prone for abuse and for all sorts of different things. Now, this isn't to say that step parents are bad, because they're not, right? There's tons of great step parents out there. Nobody's making that claim. Only that if you are with your biological partner, right, or the parent, the biological parent of the children, that the rates of abuse drastically decrease inside those homes for those children, period. Even if the parents stay and they're out of love with each other, they don't even really like each other. You see this often in religious marriages, religious institutions, where they'll stay on behalf of the children. The children's outcomes are generally speaking far and away better.
Really quick, in 5 minutes, we're going to probably do a prompt change, and then we're going to read some chats.
Okay.
Yeah, so continue, but in 5 minutes, we're going to let a couple chats come through.
Okay.
Sure. How long have we been going?
About over an hour, just a bit over an hour.
Jesus.
Yeah, it takes a long time just to untangle worldviews. It does.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing you
No
can do
trust
about
right
We
it.
now.
can stick on the feminism for a bit longer, but in 5 minutes, we're going to let some
No
do a
problem.
little break.
I need to have a smoke anyway,
Okay.
so that's all
We
good.
have some Zen coming too.
Good.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So the problem there is I think there would probably be a data collection problem there. When you have people who are remarried, it's probably easier for kids to report that a step parent is committing abuse versus a biological parent. A child might be more trusting of their biological parents, especially if they're still together. There might be covering up of abuse that's occurring, so that I might have some issues with like gathering that data and actually coming to like a conclusion there. But I would say that
Would something like multiple meta-analyses on that data do something to assuage your doubts?
meta-analyses on the data that says that
Step parents are more prone to abuse than the biological father.
sure, I mean that's fine, but there once again I would need to see that data. I'd have to go through it, see what kind of methodological problems exist there, because I would suspect that the abuse would go a lot less reported, because that's something that you can't account for. If a kid's not going to report it, a kid's not going to report it. But you can make an inference and say like, okay, well, kids are typically more trusting. Kids come out years later and say, hey, my biological parents abused me and I never told anybody. And sometimes they don't even tell teachers.
Well, I mean, a lot of these studies they're going over multiple decades, right? And so is the meta-analysis.
Sure,
going
that
over
doesn't get rid
multiple
of the problem. That doesn't
it gets rid of some of those problems, but doesn't get rid of all of them. I agree.
Not the data collection, not the issue. It doesn't make that type of problem go away.
Which
Why
type,
would gathering
which type of problem specifically?
the problem of abuse being covered up or children being more trusting of biological parents?
So that could be the case. I was just talking when you were saying like children could come out later and discuss abuse rates or something like that. It's like, yeah, that's true, but one way that you could compensate for that is to have longevity in your study, following these same people, and then getting back with them 20 years later or whatever, so that you can make these determinations. So that would be one way that you could compensate.
Sure,
for that.
and it might still not fully compensate for it though. If that person still is
I don't
more trusting
disagree.
of their biological parent.
Yeah,
so it doesn't fully get rid of that
I don't
issue.
disagree. I was just saying that here there is some things that you could do, but I agree, right? But I would say that a meta-analysis, multiple meta-analysis, that would at least be something you'd look at.
And I want to make it clear, the claim that I'm
Before you make your dumb claim, listen. Besides the data that's proven about this, about single mothers that have new partners that play stepdaddy, is very higher. The risk even extremely high. I'm not sure what's the percentage. I'm not going to Google it right now, but I know it's over 50%, much higher. And the reason why is because the man that you're fucking, ladies, and I'm going to say with the F word, the man you're dealing with doesn't have no allegiance or ties to that seed because not his. And let's be honest, depending on the race of the man, especially if you have a son or especially daughters, chances are he's going to abuse your kids, especially the boys and especially the daughters. And I say it's going to be equal, even between the two. So if you guys sit there at the city and say, well, I need an actual study because I don't think I agree with that. You don't have to agree with enough because you, if you're not a single mother, which I doubt, but let's say you give off that single mother vibes. Most of these don't give a crap or have a problem webs to your kids if you have a new person in your life that's going to play stepdaddy in your relationship. I'm just keep real. Just keep real. Because when you're with the original baby, the original baby father, you don't play these games because he's going to fight hard tooth and nail for his. And as long as you take him out the equation, out the picture, you open doors for unknown people to get access to your children. And I think that's wrong. That's so wrong. Anyhow, let's keep going.
Disputing isn't necessarily that step parents don't abuse their children more than biological parents do. That could be very well true. But what I'm saying is when we do have an issue finding that out, we have an issue of like, you know, children trusting their biological parents more. But we also have the issue of like sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm really thirsty. That might be a good time for a break, but we do have that methodological issue. Over time, it doesn't really get rid of it, though, if children still trust their biological parents more. And it could be the case like parents are covering it up for the other parent, whereas they wouldn't cover it up for like a new spouse or something like that. Or they might cover it up to keep the family together. That could also be a case that I would say would cause a lot of issues collecting that type of data.
Okay.
And those reasons the abuse might still not outweigh the type of harm done to the person staying with the person they don't want to be with.
All right.
Andrew, you get to stay just while the chats come through,
course.
and then I'll
I'll
go over
smoke
some
and we'll
other
finish,
things
yep.
just for a little smoke break.
Sure.
Firstly, I'm going to let some of these chats come through. Guys, if you do want to get a chat in at this.
So one thing I'm going to do, because I'm going to do this because I want to, hold on. Because this is a very lengthy conversation and much times I want to deal with the time on this. Let me look. I'm thinking. I'm trying to find a section where to speed up. I'm gonna speed up now. Let me look. Let me see. All right, so I'm going fast forward here. All right, let me see what it says. Let's keep going.
This moment, you can do so via streamlabs.com/whatever. Read is $100 and up. One quick question for you, and some people
Sure.
in the chat were commenting. Are the glasses prescription?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
they are.
are casting a bit of a glare.
A glare? Oh, my
So
bad.
if you can,
I don't know. Maybe if I need to clean them or something.
no, I think it's just the natural glare.
Sure. Yeah, they are prescription.
Okay, so you do
will
need
be
them.
blind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then keep them on. All right. I'm gonna let the chats come through. We have.
KK 1213 donated $100. Are the glasses functional or are they intended to make you seem more intelligent? Because the latter ain't working. Sorry, missed the last streams. Had to work.
We all got to work, man.
Yeah. No, they're totally fake. I'm just wearing them to look intelligent.
Thank you, KK. We have Lucas here. He says your incitement of violence argument against the Confederate flag is garbage. You're conveniently omitting the part that use of the flag has to be directed to inciting imminent violence. Continued, where he says, just one moment, while we're waiting for his second one to come up, where he writes, in other words, the use of the flag has to be intended for the purpose of violence, and the violence has to be imminent, that is, right away. See Brandenburg v. Ohio, and oh, by the way, I'm a lawyer. I don't know if you want to respond to that, or...
I mean, there's not much to respond to. I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that just
Sure.
isn't clear.
Okay. Oh, it is
Clay
coming through.
donated $200.
Thank you, Clay.
Pretty sure you could have paid a tree to make her same argument. All hail xenomorphs. Andrew, I owe you a bottle of red breast having to deal with this. She does not even understand the arguments.
She's done better than most of them come on. What do you like? She's done pretty good.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't agree. I don't know if she did. I mean, mostly people that you have debates. I mean, some are impressive and some are. Well, I haven't really listened to all the debates Andrew have on this podcast, but I'm not really impressed right now. Personally, I mean, it's just me, guys. Just me. Let's go.
We have Ogle here.
She's at least engaging. She's only done the tone policing a couple times, so like that's pretty good.
And thank you, Claim, for that. Ogle coming in here. Thank you, Ogle.
Ogle_glue.net donated $200. A+ debate tonight.
See? Ogle
the
likes
guest
it.
for once is giving Andrew some strong opposition and can keep up with him intellectually. One question, do champagne pop donors work in the debate series? Half bottle each.
I'll leave it up to the two panelists.
Yeah,
so.
send in the champagne pop. She doesn't have to have any, but I'll drink
Do you
enough
want
for the both of
some
us.
champagne if
Sure.
they pop
Yeah.
the ball for us? Okay, Ogle,
Pop
that's
it.
very kind of you, Ogle.
Appreciate it.
And Ogle, we do have the regular champagne bottle option, and we do have the ETH champagne bottle option for a bottle of Cristal. So those are the two options available. We have Super Korean here, and he writes, "Don't vegans have a moral obligation to not only exterminate all invasive species, lionfish, python species, feral hogs, etc., but consume them to prevent them from destroying native species?" And you're a vegan, right? So
Yeah. That's a position some vegans take. That's not a position I hold to.
got it. Okay. Well, that is it for the chats. Andrew, if you want to take your smoke
Yeah,
break,
take a quick smoke.
and I'll go over a couple things,
Okay.
and just while you're gone smoking. So, guys, if you're enjoying the stream, if you're enjoying the debate, and you want to ask a question, so you can do so through
All right, as I let this run by,
Cash App. Will shout you guys out at.
because this is long. And let me check my social media. Very quiet. And to let everybody know, since I'm doing a pause here, if you get this far, the algorithm has changed a little bit because of the AI introduced now into YouTube. So when most content people do move forward, it might get attention, it might not. That varies because of artificial intelligence now introduced on YouTube. And the thing what YouTube's going to do now that people don't know, so I'm going to say it right now, they are going to actually start putting out more soft content in regards to make you feel good. So they're not going to put out any more of the if you do put out any rougher content, let's say either of it's news content, they might put it through the algorithm, but 9/10 time they're gonna put it under the rug after it's uploaded or live stream, because they want people to be put more to sleep. From what it's been said, when I was looking at some of the videos out here now, how the algorithm is changing now, and this might be for a good period for now. Not sure how long this will last. I would give it a few months, hopefully, but we shall see. But let's see, these guys are ready to have the conversation now. I just want to give you all a little heads up for those as YouTube content creators, so be in heads up. If you have any more questions, you're going to hit me up in the chat room or in the comment section. I'll put my email or join my social media and talk to me on the back end. Let's go.
School.
And then apparently, hold on, Ogle is saying.
Ogle_glue.
Wow, he did send in the Ethereum. Okay, we're gonna pop a ball of Cristal.
Nice.
Good
Wow.
entertainment tonight.
Okay.
Checketh address, Brian.
All right, guys. W's in the guys. Can we get some W's in the chat for Ogle? He's been a longtime supporter. This show is viewer supported. We wouldn't be able to do the show without the very generous patronage of our viewers. So big thank you to Ogle, guys. W's in the chat
And send
for
in
Ogle.
the super chats. Send in the super chats.
And we
That's what
have,
makes it
I think
possible.
we have, if you really want to see Andrew just obliterated, tanked, and blasted.
Well, I do got to fly out tomorrow, bro.
Well, perfect.
Agree.
Perfect.
Same. Yeah.
But there's the other champagne pop option too. So, okay, Ogle, thank you so much again. I'm going to get that sorted. And these are some Twitch subs coming through, guys, again, if you want. That's twitch.tv/whatever for those. I'm going to get that bottle going. So guys, do you want to continue on feminism, or would you like to switch to, we have the body count discussion
Yeah, we can
and the
move.
abortion.
Yeah, let's move. We'll move the topic.
Do you have a preference on abortion or body count, or just
We'll do body count
We'll do
first.
body count.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Anne, it's kind of your position. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we look at people's happiness in their relationships versus like the comparison with the amount of people that they've had intimate relationships with, there tends to be a lot of variation in the long-term happiness or success of a relationship.
You talking marriages?
I'm sorry?
You mean like marriages?
I believe the last time I looked at the statistics, it was looking at people who were in marriages. So on the lower end of the spectrum, if you tended to have less bodies, and I believe the number is somewhere between like 1 to 3, you tended to have less successful marriages. And then as those numbers kind of get up a little bit and a little bit, those are where you kind of, it stabilizes, you get like more happy, more successful marriages or relationships. And don't cite me on the marriages thing. It could just be relationships.
Wait, what the fuck? This chick that said, so you're saying if a woman have less than 1 to 3 bodies, she is gonna be unfaithful? Is that what I'm hearing? I think I'm hearing things. So you're telling the people that's gonna watch this or viewing this, you're advocating, and I'm not saying advocate, but let's say we go there, that the more bodies women have, the more faithful she'll be. Let me keep playing. Let me see if there's a rebuttal for that. I think I might be hearing things, but that's what I just caught. I don't know about y'all, but that's what I caught.
It's been a while since I've looked at that data. But then on the other end, where you get into the, the higher numbers, what people would call more extreme numbers, more, more promiscuous people, their marriages also tend to be less happy. So on both ends of the extremes, you tend to have less happy marriages. And then somewhere in the middle, you tend to have, more happier marriages or relationships. Those relationships are more successful.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with what you're citing. I think, now, again, don't quote me either because we don't have the data in front of us, but
Right.
I believe that this was based around marriage. And now, you're not talking about Pew, you're talking about, I think there's a specific study on that. I just can't think of what it is. I'm sure we could pull it up or have Brian pull it up, but did this account for secular versus non-secular marriages?
For what? Sorry, what was the word?
Secular versus non-secular, so like religious marriages versus non-religious.
I wouldn't know. We'd have to look at the data.
Yeah,
Because once
so
again, I'm not even sure if they were talking about marriages.
Well, can we agree that at least according to modern data and including Pew Research did a bunch on this as well, that people who are in highly religious marriages, they tend to divorce less than people who are not in highly religious marriages.
Sure. Yeah. There might be factors that account for that. Like maybe it's looked down upon in their culture to get divorced, even if you're going through something difficult like abuse. Because just to get clear on this, you think that people who are being abused should leave their partner, right?
Depending on severity, not necessarily the first order, but if there's, depending on severity.
Do you think that people who are being physically abused should leave their partners?
Again, it would
Same answer?
It would depend on severity.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you think even if there is physical abuse present that someone should
I think
stay?
that two people can get drunk, right? And like a woman can smack a dude in the back of the head. That would be considered physical abuse, and then just never
Sure.
do it again the rest of her life. I'm not going to tell that woman to like run out on her marriage. Right? I don't, or
Interesting.
tell that guy like, oh, something like that. Or here's another thing that's really common. So, and you see this in just normal relationships all the time. Like a guy will make a snide comment, and like, let's say they're watching a movie or something, he'll make a snide comment and the woman will kind of like smack him on the arm, you know what I mean? Or something like that.
Right.
Is that physical abuse? I guess it could be considered
course
that.
not.
So, but it's severity. It's up to severity.
I don't know that I would call it in a case of abuse. Like if you were messing around with your wife and she like smacked you upside the head as a joke, I don't think you would call that abuse. I don't think
I
most
wouldn't
people
call
would
it
be.
abuse.
Right.
I wouldn't.
Okay, so just for the sake of this conversation, actions that weren't intended to be
Again, I think it
harmful.
depends on severity.
are you okay? Well, I mean, I think for the sake of this, we can exclude those cases. We can exclude the cases where someone just like
I still think
jokingly pushes you.
I still think that it would depend on severity. Like, I also think a woman can get really, really upset, and one time she slapped her husband because she was so upset. Or let's say she threw a plate across the room and it broke. Okay. You know, something like that. I think that there's some of these things are pardonable and you can work past them. I don't think that those are necessarily they could be red flags for sure, but I'm not going to tell a person that they need to give up on their marriage over them.
Sure. Do you think most cases of abuse are worthy of kind of divorcing your partner? Just out of curiosity.
Well, like physical abuse, maybe. What is considered emotional abuse, probably not.
Right. We can exclude it to, like persistent emotional abuse would be something you would say you should probably end a relationship over, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. We can agree there.
Persistent emotional abuse, depending on how it's categorized.
What do you mean by how it's categorized?
Well, it depends on how you would categorize emotional abuse. It's very evasive.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. But we can just say, like, you think that the most times when people get divorced over emotional abuse, they're usually talking about those like severe cases, right? Like they're talking about like persistent.
No, I'm not. I'm not at all convinced that when people say they're, especially women, that they're getting a divorce based on emotional abuse, that there was anything other than she just wasn't happy based on other circumstances that called it emotional abuse, because it's such a nebulous term.
Okay, that's fine. I might actually be fine with that. I think there's a problem with psychology where the average person has adopted terms that are specific psychological terms. Like
narcissist?
Everyone's a narcissist now. Everyone has autism now. Everyone is, BPD now. So whatever term. Everyone's gas.
To recap, let's roll back. In regards to abuse, there are many forms of abuse. But like anything, if you're in a relationship or let's say long-term relationship, all the signs will be revealed within time. It does not, this just shows up front after you put the ring on it and then say, I do. Everything is shown. Time is your example. It's given off every time for little things you do that he might not like, or what you do that he doesn't like. And eventually you guys come to the middle, right? So in regards to physical violence, I say this many times on the channel. It's better, and I advise most of us to keep our hands to ourselves. But we all know in this weird world we live in where women don't really have no accountability and stuff, that it is justified to put their hands on men. So it's hard for me to really preach a message. But I do. But in regards to men, I will say it's protect yourself at all costs. And if you feel the woman has put hands on you, that should be a sign that you should end the relationship. So, all right, let's keep going.
Gaslighting everyone. I understand that. I think there is some truth to that. And to the extent that there is truth to that, it should be like handled and understood by people generally. But I would say in a lot of cases that's the case where you have like severe emotional, what you would categorize, we can just use whatever your standard is.
For severe emotional abuse.
Sure, yeah. Whatever your standard is for severe emotional abuse and severe physical abuse, you would think that would be more likely to be covered up in, let's say, like religious families, right?
No,
where there's...
I don't think it's more likely. In fact, I think that the reason it works is because you're more likely to get help. So because you have an ecclesiastical structure and traditional church functions, you have a community which is there that's able to actually assist inside of these relationships for these problems that come up, whereas a lot of other people don't have resources or they have secular resources. So
you think that... Okay, I mean, maybe that's like an empirical claim, once again, because it's kind of hard to just say that, like, oh...
Well, there's a lot of good evidence for this. So the fact of the matter is that you would just logically agree with this, probably, that if you have community which you can turn to for assistance in your marriage, that's probably better than not having a community to turn to for assistance in your marriage.
Yeah,
that's
of course,
probably always the case.
But if that community reinforces ideas that, like, men are supposed to have power over women, and in sometimes a physical sense,
that shouldn't be problematic if within the view of the religion both partners believe that.
Right. Sorry. I'm going to wait for him to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're like scaring. I'm like waiting for it. It's like someone's popping a balloon. I'm just like waiting.
You guys continue.
Okay. Sure, there can be these structures, but if these structures reinforce the idea that it's good to stay with your partner no matter what, like there are sects of like Catholics who believe that you should never get divorced. Like it's bad any time that you do it.
No.
There are sects of
No, that's incorrect.
Baptists or Protestants.
Catholics are under one single ecclesiastical church authority, and the doctrines are uniform across Catholicism itself, or you're not in communion with the church. So that being the case, their ecclesiastical authority is going to be an unchanging standard from their view. So it's not going to change. It's going to be, and if you're not part of that, you're not part of the Catholic Church. And it would be the same thing with like Orthodox Christians. You would not be a part of this body itself by its own ecclesiastical rules.
That's like church politics. I mean, that's fine. You can say that like, okay, well, if Catholics claim this,
you'll be all right.
That was underwhelming.
Okay. I was like,
Don't worry, I had my
you like hyped it up too.
I had my
was like,
hands on
please
the.
don't
He
shoot me
did.
in
He
the
brought
eye.
it up.
These glasses are real. Please don't test that.
Thank you, Ogle. Appreciate it. I'll get you guys the. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but you can boil that down to like church politics. Like they can call them like not real Christians or not real Protestants, not real Catholics, whatever, if they choose to, follow this doctrine that says
Protestants
like, it's okay
can do
for-
that, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's fine. You think that there's some like pretty blasphemous or like unorthodox
that's
Catholics?
Not, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about, so not every single church authority has an ecclesiastical or governmental structure. So you violate this structure, you're not a part of this. That's really clear guidelines for what makes you the thing or not the thing. Like we have clear guidelines for what makes us the United States of America. So there are church authorities which have very clear guidelines to what makes you a part of that authority. If you violate it, you're not a part of it. That's
right. You can say that they're not a part of the head. Like they're not under that domain anymore. That's fine. But they have all of the other properties that go along with that.
No, they don't, or they would be part of the thing itself.
I think this is just semantics.
No, but it is semantics, but it's really important when we're talking about this because what we're discussing is, if you're a part of this religious denomination and it's giving you kind of this bad advice, et cetera, should you be relying on them as a community? And then when you bring up Catholicism as an example, it's like, well, I want to make sure that you're not strawmanning what Catholics believe before you make whatever the empirical claim
I'm
is.
not. I'm just saying you agree that there are some.
Yeah.
So we'll do a quick cheers.
Cheers to Ogle.
Ogle, thank you for the Cristal champagne bottle pop. Salud.
Yeah,
cheers.
So there are people who still claim that, though. They still claim the church, and then they go against maybe some, typical teachings of the church. That's fine.
But when we're
so there's
looking
no
at
disagreement
empirics,
there.
when they say Catholic, right?
You think they're just lying, or you think
No.
they're
When they
confused?
say Catholic, I'm just saying there's actual specific criteria for what makes you Catholic.
Yeah, that's fine. That doesn't change, and none of my argument hinges on that. Like none of the questioning we're talking
Just
about hinges
clearing
on
it
that.
up.
Okay, that's fair. But yeah, look. So if these certain sects of Christianity, whether that's Protestantism, whether that's some weird off-brand Catholic that is claiming they're Catholic and you don't really believe that they're Catholic, or they're in fact not Catholic. If those people are in those situations where those ideas are reinforced, that like you should stay together because marriage is holy, you shouldn't violate marriage, you should uphold these like beliefs about staying together for kids, like that maybe their religion promotes like nuclear families, and so they hold that above like severe physical abuse. Like you think that that's wrong, and you think that that's probably more likely that they'll stay together.
I think it's unlikely that you're going to find any mainstream church denominations which uphold abusive relationships.
They don't necessarily have to overtly uphold them. They can do it in subvert ways, like reinforcing, like telling their members privately to keep this private. We don't want this to look bad on the church. We don't want this to look bad on your family. It looks bad on God.
So yeah, secularists do the same thing within their own family dynamics and be like, well, we don't want this to get out. It could be embarrassing, et cetera, et cetera. So my whole point though was that if there is a community present, right, for marriage, generally it's a good thing. And it generally helps marriages, doesn't hurt them. And so one of the things that we see is that people who are rigorous with their church authority tend to stay married longer. And it's exactly because of those concepts, in fact, that is reinforced by the community that's so helpful to these marriages.
Right, but there could be concepts in the community like no matter what, it's still bad to divorce your partner, even if they're abusing you because it goes against God's will, because it goes against XYZ, insert whatever religious reason that they want to give. So gathering data on that is going to be really hard. That's the only point that I'm making here. Is like gathering data on whether or not they're actually having a happy,
but gathering
non-abusive.
gathering data on almost anything is really hard.
There's
So-
some instances where it's exceptionally hard, and that is one of the cases.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's one of the cases. Like when we're talking about, I mean, there's exceptional record keeping kept, especially by things by like Catholic churches. It's so exceptional, in fact, that they kept all the records of like the abuses that happened with underage kids and this kind of thing, right? They do pretty exceptionally keep records, and they do get reviewed by other priests, parishes, oversights by bishops, all sorts of different things. And it's like, I think that if such things were happening in mass, we'd be hearing about them. I'm not saying that some churches may not have things like this going on, just like some secular families could, based on, I'm an internet personality, I don't want it to get out, or I have a big reputation, I don't want you to, you know what I mean? It's the same exact thing.
No, I agree.
There,
I think that does happen in Hollywood a lot. I think that happens where they go, well, we don't want this movie to look bad, so let's cover up this thing that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard did.
Just
Like,
anybody in a
it is.
prestigious position or doesn't want
No, I agree.
embarrassment or whatever. So, but
Right, so the church is not exempt to that. So when you say like, oh, well, people in religious institutions tend to stay married for longer, there might be some issues with that because of the fact that there's this image to uphold for religion itself and for the church and the institution.
They wouldn't be the only ones beholden to it. And the correlate there is so strong that the more rigorous. So
So in other words, you're saying that the church as it stands, because old-fashioned, that men and women, especially women that, let's be honest, file for divorce the most. I think right now the state of divorce is at 50% in America. I got double check. Black women and black men, or just in general, black women divorce at now 80%. So let me get this straight. Because this old fashioned of staying to the long haul, to a lot of Western women, in their mind, it's old fashioned, and they feel that they should have the obligation to walk out anything that does not suit them. Meaning, if they're tired or bored and it's not fulfilling, that it's going to walk off the marriage. And that's not how marriage was designed for, last time I checked. I think what happens, what I said earlier in this broadcast, that you ladies don't obligate duty. Besides, you're selfish, let's keep it real. But in regards to duty and upholding that you're doing this for the betterment of the future seeds that's going to bestow upon your womb, you don't think long term. And my biggest issue with a lot of Western mentality and Western marriage in general, or just Western culture in general, if we want to go there, is it's a fairy tale, it's delusion, it's fantasies created and influenced with the help of media that gives the delusion to a lot of women that how life should be, and that's not the case. Life is not supposed to be no fairy tale where everything's nice, cool, relaxing. You're gonna put in work. It's that simple. You're just gonna put in some work, and if you're not willing to do the work and look at the bigger picture in the long term, then really truly, I'm not sure if marriage is for you, like you ladies. I mean, y'all want to have kids. I mean, y'all could do that, but even that's going to be problematic because you have kids now. You're going to cause conflict within the relationship already with the kids, with the man. So I'm not saying your ladies supposed to get your money up and go the Ebony K route, but most of y'all are not going to. So you got some sacrifice to make, ladies. You be the judge. Let's keep going. Various, and enjoy. And please, guys, leave some comments. Let's go.
Here's the thing. We know this because we can look at people. Various churches have different sacramental or religious, functions that you need to follow. The more you follow X function, the longer you stay married, right? Sure. Now, is that causation? Probably. There could be other things. In fact, there is going to be other things, right? But it's a pretty strong correlate there.
It seems like there's an equivocation though between a long marriage, like a long-lasting marriage, and a happy marriage. And
But happiness is done by self-report, right? So
Well, that's probably one of the best ways that we have access to people's happiness. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these people are self-reporting happiness as well. In fact, women who get married as virgins, their self-reported happiness in their marriage is much, much higher in the opposition. And the most recent study that I read on that, so the reason is because there's no sample size for comparison against that. So if you've only ever slept with one man, essentially you don't know what you're missing, if you are missing anything. And so you're just kind of happy and content. That seems like it's pretty good for society.
It might be good, but you could say something like there's wrong under, there's something bad happening in like a counterfactual sense. Like maybe, their happiness level is maybe like an 8 with this person that is the only person that they've ever met, the only person they've ever interacted with. And then you could take, there's a possible world where they meet somebody who's far better. Maybe, they like the temperature the same, in the house all the time or something like that.
But
or they want the same amount of kids or something like that. So
What?
that's
You can make that argument for everything.
There could be, okay.
Yeah, you could say, well, Andrew, you're in a very happy marriage and you're very happy with your marriage, but there could be a world which exists in somewhere where you could have met a woman who's even better than Rachel. And so you could apply that universally to every marriage which exists currently, every relationship which exists currently across the board. I'm not sure how that would be helpful to this.
Right. But so remember what we were talking about was the sample size for the individual being very small. If you've had a larger sample size, then that kind of mitigates that factor there. So when you look at somebody who has maybe 2 partners that they've dated before and they're marrying their 3rd partner or something, they at least have a data set to look at, like, okay, well, here are the possibilities of things that I like and things I don't like. And I've kind of been able to weed through and have the opportunity of having a more fulfilling relationships with a 3rd person because I have been able to weed out, these are the type of people I maybe am not as compatible with.
Right,
Whereas
okay.
that person, the person who hasn't had any other experiences, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
No,
I'm not saying it's necessarily bad.
Well, it's actually strange, in fact, because they would still be at the mercy of the same thing. Perhaps, though, if they hadn't gone off and had the 2nd or 3rd relationship and had only stayed in the 1st relationship as a virgin and had nothing to compare it to, then in an alternative world, they would have been much happier by that standard. And that's like, it would be the same thing applied here.
Yeah, that. I'm fine with saying that those people in those relationships are happy, but there could be something where they are happier once they have a bigger data set. So it's obviously with more knowledge about the world, like you have the ability to pick and choose better, you're more informed on the things that will make you happier. Right?
Well, I would agree that you gain more experience in the things that are happening around you, perhaps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are positive experiences or that you wish that you had known them.
Yeah, they don't have to necessarily. I'm just saying that with the bigger data set, you have more of a likelihood of finding the thing that's going to make you more happy.
But wouldn't this imply that the data set which was done on virgins and their happiness is somehow smaller than the data set which is done on people who've had 2 or 3 partners? Unless you're just saying, well, it's just trivially true that the people who've had 2 or 3 partners have had sex with more than one person, so we can just view them in a different light. It's like...
No, maybe just to clarify, I'm not talking about the data set. Do you mean the data set of people surveyed? Are you saying that you think that I'm saying that?
No. I think what you're saying is that women who have had 2 or 3 partners necessarily have more experience than the virgin. And
they
so
have a bigger
because of
data
that,
set, yeah.
they don't know what they're missing.
The virgins, like people who are virgins, don't know what they're missing. Yeah, I think they have less of a data set.
But why would okay. They have less of a data set when it comes to sleeping with more people, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but why would that be a bad thing?
Right, because they have the possibility of looking for people or things that they're more compatible with. So let's just say the virgin, this person who's dated one person only has access to the data set of this person that makes them 8 out of 10 happy or something like that. Whereas the person who's had access, and engaged in intercourse or maybe had just, personal romantic relationships with other people, they have access to data sets of people who make them a level 10 happy or a level 8 or a level 7 or something like that. They have more access. They have access to more data, right? That individual has more access to data about what causes them to be happy in a relationship.
Okay, but again, couldn't I just apply this to anything? Couldn't I be like, well, there's not enough of a data set for us to really determine that if people don't drink gasoline, that they wouldn't be happier if they didn't have the experience of drinking gasoline before.
We do have we unfortunately have data on that, and it turns out really bad.
And it's a pretty large sample size of virgins.
Okay, so what's being confused is not that the amount of people who are virgins.
No, it's not being confused.
There is, because you're saying the sample size of virgins that we have.
You're equivocating.
Hold on. But breathe.
Yeah.
You're saying right now
I'll show you.
that the amount of virgins that we have is less. I'm not saying that. We could have 50 virgins and 50 people who have had sexual experiences.
I know you're not
with
saying
one other
that. What
person.
you just got done saying was what we do understand the correlation between gasoline and people's happiness. And it's like, okay, but we do understand the correlation between virginity and virgin's happiness in marriage. It's the same thing back and forth. What would be the experience differential there? Why shouldn't I go drink gasoline to know that drinking gasoline, it probably isn't going to make me happy?
Okay, so let's get this clear first. I will say this, the person who decides to go drink gasoline, let's just say you have two people, one who has never drank gasoline, the other person is going to. Both of them have the same knowledge about the facts about what that would do to them. But there's also, some like non-zero probability that they could live a happy life and love drinking gasoline, and that's, their thing.
Which there are people, I guess, who do. But anyway.
Before they go off in some tangent, now follow me, guys and ladies. What is really the importance of you ladies going around the cock carousel and riding as much phallus that your hearts imagine? Like, literally, seriously. And let me see. I want me riding the carousel. Let me see. Let me see if I can add another one. I'm just going to add another one. See, I know what I'm talking about. Oh, no, I can't add it. Oh well.
Anyway,
there are freaks, but yeah. Look, so these people, the person who did in fact drink the gasoline.
So in other words, just because you want to have experience, it's like go back to the conversation that Aisha Curry should have gone out there and be a 3 or 4 and had her whole face. And you hear a lot of stupid women that's out there, let's be honest, screwing like their heart desire with other men. And I'm saying this really honestly, that they feel nothing's wrong with it, and saying being tied or bonded to one man is a negative thing, it's a bad thing, it's a sin. Man, you ladies need to get y'all life in order. Y'all guys gotta get y'all, man, I would tell y'all might have to go to the sink and clean your box or something, man. Get your in order, man, for real. Because what makes sense, you up here getting more bodies on you? Like, really, literally. Usually women that talk like that, they're already damaged goods, personally. Especially if you didn't lose to one man, or you lost to one boy or whatever, and you go around and then you decide to go sleep with many men. It's not a good look. You hear it constantly from all groups of men. It's not cool to be around a woman that's so promiscuous or has that much experience. It's not a good look. You ladies know it's right, but you decide to play and ignore it because you want to do what you want to do, and that's fine. You get the results you get. Simple as that. I'm going to keep talking.
And regardless of whether or not the outcome was good, if they hated it, if they loved it, whatever, that person does in fact, whether that's for the worse or better, have a bigger data set to go off of. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
But should they do it?
Should they? No, obviously not.
Well, then we're back to this.
We know about the significant negative outcomes. Of that.
I would just make the same argument back for this, that if they shouldn't drink gasoline, because we know that there's significant bad outcomes for that, but your argument for they should have more than one sexual partner, even though we know the negative outcomes for that, and you say, but there's a possibility that they just don't know what they're missing, I just make the same argument with gasoline.
Well, just to be clear, because going back to the prompt wasn't that people should have multiple partners. The prompt is more so about, and maybe you can read it back specifically, but it was about the fact that if you're looking for a partner, the main concern shouldn't be the amount of partners that person has.
I don't think it's a main concern.
The prompt was, you shouldn't care about body count if you want a relationship.
Yeah, shouldn't.
Right, and by that I mean that shouldn't be your main concern. I mean, I'm allowed to clarify, right?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
I think
So, yeah,
that's totally fair. So, yeah, so you're not actually saying that shouldn't
that in no
be a
case
factor.
you should ever care. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you should care in some cases. Of course.
Yeah. Like, so if it is the case that I have good evidence to support that a woman staying a virgin, right, and she's religious, like, for instance, let me give you an example. If you're a religious man, right, and you would have certain virtues which are attributed to your religion.
Sure.
One of which could be to marry a woman who's virtuous, and a sign of chastity. A sign of virtue could be chastity. That's in Christianity, for instance. Chastity is overwhelmingly large when it comes to the idea of virtue. So you would think men like that actually should be selecting for body count, right?
They should if the person isn't currently acting in that way. So the problem that you run into here is, like, obviously people who were prior atheists can be reformed. They can find Christianity, they can find God.
Totally agree.
And maybe they've had some, harlot past where they've gone out and they've slept with 50 men and done all these terrible things and extorted people and all sorts of things. But when that person, and maybe this could end up being like a semantic thing, but when that person, comes to the faith and they find God, that body count still exists, right? Unless you think that it doesn't.
It still does.
Right. So you agree that there could be a perfectly suitable partner for a man who is a Christian, right? And one of the things that happened to be in her past was that, she had all of these sexual partners, but now she has, found Christ. So in that case, yeah, it wouldn't be right for him to consider that if she's changed.
Yeah, no, it would be totally right for him to consider it.
Why would he consider that?
Because
if
it
she's
would
changed?
because it would still show a pattern of not upholding the same virtues he's looking for.
In the past, but not currently. But if she's currently upholding those values.
Well, your past behaviors is generally a really good indication of your future behavior.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine to say. But if he has really good overriding evidence that she will never do that again, that she, will go forward and be,
I don't know what evidence he
virtuous or
could
whatever.
have for that.
Let's just say he has some evidence, regardless.
Yeah,
but if he has
some,
that evidence.
Yeah, if you were to say, like, he had a crystal ball in front of him,
Right.
and he could see the whole future, sure, I wouldn't dispute that. But that
Right,
would be
of course.
baked. That would be baked into the fact of knowledge itself. He has pre-existing knowledge this will not happen, or some really overwhelmingly good, compelling evidence it wouldn't. But absent that, which I would argue in most cases they wouldn't have, then it would show a pattern of behavior against the same virtues he's looking for, where he could select for somebody who's upheld those virtues.
There's also, so that's fine to say that if he has reason to believe that she'll still engage in those behaviors, regardless of whether or not she's in a committed relationship with him, that's a kind of separate question, but an adjacent question. Because the question is she going to be promiscuous in this relationship? Presumably, like, if you take somebody who has like a large body count, they're usually not in relationships with those people.
No, it's not. Well,
Unless you disagree.
I dispute the premise here a bit. I'm going to quibble a little bit, but I think I'm fine quibbling on this point.
Okay.
So my quibble is it's not really necessarily even a sign that she will be promiscuous, though I think it's there. Only a sign that she's perhaps not upholding virtues. She doesn't have a pattern of upholding virtues. So I think that, like any behavior, like if you're a practicing Christian or a practicing Muslim, let's say, they hold set values for what virtues are. And just like language, communication, and all forms of different habits which are formed in people, they're done by exercising them over and over and over again. So if you're a person who is high in virtue, you're probably consistently exercising virtues as part of your habit, right? You're stopping on let's give a stupid example, like you're always stopping on the side of the road to help people, or you're always, you know what I mean? That becomes habit after a while. After a while, you almost can't help but pull off on the side of the road to help somebody because it's so habitually built up in you. So I think that for them, this could be a great red flag sign that, wait, these habits, these virtue habits aren't really formed yet, especially if you're a new Christian, right? Or you just came to Christ in this sense. These habits haven't even had a chance to flower yet. And if you could select for somebody who's upheld them, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. So then it's not the necessarily body count thing. It's more so about whether or not the trend that happened in the past will continue, and whether or not that person will adopt to the virtues that you
Well,
have.
it is body count, though, because body count would be the virtue which is being broken.
Right, but they're breaking that when they're not a Catholic or not a Christian, right? So it's kind of like you're saying like, okay, well, I want to hold you to the standard of this religion where we have these specific virtues, but I'm going to hold your past self who's not involved in that religion to that standard. And that doesn't quite make sense. So there could be, and I think in most cases, probably, when you look at people who come to Catholicism or to the church in general, and they say, hey, I'm reformed, I want to get my life turned around, I want to stop drinking, I want to stop partying, whatever XYZ that you would find to be like vices. I think that it's probably likely that that person should take that as a strong consideration into the relationship.
You didn't actually give a reason for why that doesn't quite make sense, though. You said that doesn't quite make sense, but then you gave a reason that actually still makes sense. You can indeed hold people to your ethical worldview and ethical standard even before they adopted it. And you can say, based on the pattern of behavior pre-adopting my standard, you did not uphold to it, so I have good reason to believe you will not in the future, at least as of right now, until otherwise demonstrated, like we would do with all pattern recognition behavior.
Yeah, that's fair. So what I'm saying here is that there's overriding considerations. I'm saying that like if you talk to a person, which I would assume this would be the case in like the courting sense, you typically don't just like have someone be your girlfriend the next day, especially not in like religious traditions. Mm-hmm. It's typically that, you get to know the person first. So with that assumption in mind, I would say that you're probably getting to know this person first. And then you're saying, okay, well, how much confidence do I have that now that they're part of the faith, now that I know this person, that they're going to uphold these values in the future?
Yeah.
And are they going to uphold them under the conditions of this religion? Because in the sense, we talked about this earlier, they are likely not in relationships with those people. So what you're asking is, are you going to stay in a relationship with the person that you're like sexually active with or something like that?
And
right?
you have good reason to believe at that point, perhaps not.
Sure, you might have that as a consideration.
Sure.
But the consideration of like in the Catholic faith, like I said, you don't get into a relationship with somebody the next day. So it's likely for the average person and for Catholics, I would say.
Yeah, but you see that there's a fundamental flaw there, which is, yeah, that's true. You don't get into relationships with them the next day, but this would give you good cause to not ever get into the relationship at all. This is the problem, right? It's like
after you've gotten to know the person?
No.
Sorry.
Well, you're not giving a chance to even know the person because you just go, okay, because I'm a pattern recognition machine, right? This isn't what I'm looking for because there's too much potential for X based on how many of these virtues that you have routinely broken, right? And so I don't want to waste my time with you developing good habits for virtues again or something like this. They have good cause to just pass those women up completely.
Well, those women have a reason to follow the virtues now, whereas they might not have when they were atheists. So
yeah, but
something. Well,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's kind of like saying.
What? Well, I would say is women are followers at the end of the day, and I think that the moral degradation or what do you call it, degradation of our society solely is the responsibility of overall what women see as trending, so they follow suit with the trends. And the saddest thing about all this with the trends, it's dangerous in the long run. And the reason why I say it's dangerous in the long run, because personally, you as a woman, you should not be following because someone else made a trend. You should always question everything before you enact, period. And really, truly, the dilemma of a lot of women trying to hold other women accountable is such a challenge because you ladies going to be combating with other women like to follow other women that's considered trendy or fad or hot or sexy. Case in point, Angel Reed just did the Victoria's Secret runway. Now there's articles right now as we speak that I just noticed on my social media of a particular basketball player that plays for. Did she play for Los Angeles Sparks? I don't know what team she played for. Now she wants to get in on the Victoria's Secret line and become a model while playing WNBA. So right now, women are very much Copycats. They like to see what other women are doing, and some look like it's going well. They're gonna try to emulate or copy. It is what it is. They're very much followers. They're not leaders, and that's pretty evident by what Angel Reese has done and what she's saying right here on the air right now. So I apologize, guys. I'm some caught my throat, so I try to be as clear as possible in my language. But let's keep going. Let's listen to more of this.
You never gave me a reason for, riding my bike being wrong. And then sudden of all, I adopt this religion where riding my bike is wrong. Well, obviously I'm going to have a pattern of, doing very wrong things under this religion. But once I adopt this religion, I now have a reason to adhere to that. So those women do have a reason to adhere to that.
Yeah, but the reasons can't, the problem with that argument is that the reasons can be as superficial as I want to buy a new reputation. Example, let's say you're an OnlyFans model and you decide that you don't want the societal or social stigma that comes with that anymore. And one venue that you've seen other women successfully have this stigma kind of removed from them is by converting to a certain religious sect. Inside of that religious sect, then they're essentially using that now as some type of purpose to buy a new reputation, whether they actually believe in the dogmas of it or the virtues of it or not.
Right, but you would say that I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that people don't, go around, make mistakes and then want to rebrand themselves and
it's constant, right?
Be perceived in a particular way. Of course, people want to be perceived in specific ways all the time.
Agreed.
What I am saying though is that if a Catholic were to meet someone else in the Catholic tradition, they would have overriding reasons not to consider body count so strongly because they know that this person has now adopted the Catholic faith, or at least they have good reason to believe so. I mean, I would assume that you don't just go around thinking people are just lying, or
well,
you would think you have a good reason to believe.
Well, inside of religions, Christianity particularly, we have various ways of testing what we would call perhaps the fruits of the spirit or the sins of the flesh or various things like that. Within Orthodoxy, for instance, the example is all sin, right? Let's say you have that cup. Let's say sins could be considered, I guess, equivalent to each other in badness. But one sin can fill this cup up way faster than another type of sin, though it's just as bad, right? The sin itself, the corruption that's left behind by the sin could be worse. So inside of this tradition, let's say, if that's the case, then a person who has had their cup filled to the brim with sin, right, probably going to take much longer time for them to develop good habits to not do those same corrupting types of behaviors. So it would actually give people a fairly good reason to steer clear of promiscuous women, right? Or women who've slept with many, many people when it comes to the virtue of chastity, especially, because they would see this as, well, though you have been forgiven for these sins, right? And you will be continuously forgiven for these sins. You haven't actually built up the habits for being able to exercise, not filling that cup right back up, right? That's the idea there.
Sure. I mean, I'm fine with saying that there's some people who have reason to reject some people based off of their body count. Now, whether or not that's on
so body count matters
value in some scenarios, maybe this is probably a miscommunication thing or a kind of like what we talked about before, where people, when they say things, they usually don't make universal statements.
That's true.
Where it's kind of okay, you think that I'm saying X, but I'm really saying X with an asterisk. And that's why I brought up that statistic about the people who are in between on body count numbers, where the people who have low body counts tend to have high failure rates and the people who have really high body counts tend to have high failure rates. Whereas the people kind of in between have decent marriages, decent relationships, whatever
you
the
could
study
chalk that
is,
up to things like impulse control and all sorts of other things, I'm sure. But
well, sure, there could be tons of things, but that's what I'm saying. Your average person probably doesn't have a good reason to say okay, well, that person, has a specific body count and my number is 3 and my cutoff is 3.
I think the average person, if the average person still is following Christian ethics, which I would argue inside of this country, at least so far, it is still the case that most people are trying to follow some variation of Christian ethics. That would be the overarching prevailing ethical system in the nation, at least as of now. Now, it's changing, but I think that that's the purview. If that's the purview, then I would say that probably the majority of men who are within, whatever that majority minority is, do have great cause to question body count and to look at it from a virtue standpoint as like, look, this is really bad, right? This is a really bad behavior. And can I bypass this behavior to go with somebody who does uphold these virtues? Or do I stay in, or do I select for this to begin with to even try to kindle a relationship, knowing the amount of work that could come into flexing these new virtues? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, so because what you're doing here is taking the set of people who are Christian or Christian adjacent-ish, who might want to uphold the same types of values, and then you're taking a subset of people who it might be good for them to weed people out for like
Well,
having
the
a
men.
higher body count.
I would just take the men, yeah.
You don't think that women should weed out for like high body counts amongst men?
Yeah, I think they should.
Okay. So I was just curious why you
I
said
just
that.
think from their end, well, because here when we're talking about body count, I assume that we were discussing it between should men care about it, right? Because it seems to be that men care about it a lot more than women care about it, and there could be evolutionary arguments for why that is. But regardless of that, from the Christian view, yes, I even think that women should be looking at that as well. Like if you're a chaste virgin woman, right? Yeah, I think you have totally great cause to look at a man's body count and assess that as being potential behavior for whether or not he just wants to deflower you. Don't you agree with that?
I think that
In regards to the deflowering, now let's be honest here. Let's be clear. Most of us men, hell, we could say majority, we'll never know if a woman has been deflowered unless you got her from maybe high school. And even high school, you can't really depend on that. I'm not sure what is the emphasis now for any grown adult man at this point in the stage, unless you really want to be her only one and you don't have kids. I'm not sure what goes in the psychology of men that you're out here trying to seek for women that have not been deflowered. I mean, I don't really make it much issue. I mean, pussy is pussy, but let's keep it real. Let's keep it real here. For you to sit there as a man and hope in this day and age, in this society, this very over-sexualized society we live in today, you're going to find virgins out here. You're sadly mistaken. Matter of fact, you might have a higher chance to find a virgin male than a virgin female. And the reason why is because the society is constructed and advocating and shaming and pushing women to bust it wide open. But a real, do you understand me? To bust it wide open for real. And there's problems in that, but you got to understand that's the world we live in today. Cheap and more access to box, and very few men are going to qualify for that access to box. That's the world we live in today. So overall, you know, I don't know if I agree with Andrew regardless. These men really look for deflowered women that's not been deflowered. Let's keep going.
that would be a consideration if you knew more information about people. So it's kind of hard to tell there in those cases, and that's why I say it's like very individualistic. And I think
well, I mean, something as simple as just he has a profile where he's like, I've screwed 150 women. Like, isn't that enough? Like, what more information do you need?
Well, that's why I said like the general cases. Like, yeah. I think your general person might have some concern there.
Yeah.
But the difference here is like the cases. This is obviously given the case where you're interested in dating somebody, and they've kind of also affirmed that as well. Because what we're taking here is a data set where like people aren't interested in dating somebody. Obviously, it's kind of impossible for your average person to like have sex with 200 people, you know, over the span of a few years, and also be in relationships with all of those people. So you're taking the standard where they're not in relationships with people versus where they're in relationships with people. Because the concern there would be either, you know, just hooking up with me to, you know, leave me alone, or the concern would be like cheating. Well, it doesn't increase the probability that they're going to cheat, because prior, that wasn't cheating, right? So the concern there is them leaving you. Well, if you know information about that person that would lead you to believe that they actually do want a relationship, something like they're reformed in the faith, or maybe they've just changed their standards over time and they've shown you behavior patterns like this would kind of be like, I wouldn't jump into a relationship with somebody like that anyways. So why would I, and like that, I don't mean body count wise. I mean, like, I wouldn't jump into a relationship in that manner. So why would I like jump into them like without knowing their body count? That kind of thing would come later after I already know that person has an interest.
Why select for them anyway?
Why select for
Yeah, if other options are available for women who have a lower body count, thus at least giving an immediate demonstration that they uphold at least some of the chastity virtue. Why not just move and select for them instead of selecting for the ones who have a higher body count anyway? Why, in other words, if you only have X amount of time to find the type of partner that fits your preferences, why not just go ahead and bypass this under the assumption that, hey, I have good evidence, reasonable evidence immediately to believe that there's going to be a lot more work that goes into her trying to exercise these new virtues if she's a recent convert, or if she was a convert before, like let's say she was born into it, something like this, and just violated it over and over again. Now you have evidence to the contrary that she's following the faith anyway, right?
Yeah, that's an additional factor to account for. So that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky there, is the person who has been in the faith and then has either left the faith or violated it or something like that, where they've shown like a clear disdain for those values. That might be something to take into account for. And that's fine. I'm fine saying with that body count is something that can be factored in. I just don't think for a lot of people it's the main thing that should matter. I think that if you meet somebody, you shouldn't even be like, in a relationship with them in the first place, just off the bat. I think that once you get to know them, you should have that judgment, whether or not they're good, and then you can factor in body count.
Yeah, we're speaking past each other is you keep on bringing up, well, you're already getting to know them to be in a relationship with them, right? What I'm saying is that if you have this pertinent information, why even bother selecting for it to begin with? And I do think that you are underestimating how valuable this information is, and here's why. There isn't that much which you can point to immediately for the purposes of virtue to know based on a person's past history, unless it's criminal or something like this, or gossip, right? That I can really point to immediately where I could say from a Christian worldview, that right there shows a lack of virtue, right? Or shows a pattern of behavior of you doing something that you're really not supposed to be doing. That's something super immediate that you can point to right away based on past history that you can ascertain reasonably quickly. I can't think of too many other things in the virtue department you can do that with. So I do think it is important.
Okay, so I mean, I kind of already went over this, and maybe this point wasn't like made or honed in enough, because you're once again taking the subset of people who are religious, who think that those are religious values, because you could very well have like somebody who's religious who just thinks that it's like a virtue to go and sleep with everybody and anybody as soon as possible.
Well, not the majority minority, but yeah.
Sure,
go ahead.
Right, but I'm saying that you're taking this set of people who believe these particular like values or virtues or whatever, and then you're saying, okay, well, some of those people have reason to select for people with lower body counts, and even then they still have data that kind of goes against that and says like, okay, well, with the data, maybe they are following the virtues, but there's actually less success in these relationships where the body counts are lower.
No, the data doesn't show that with virgins.
I would have to look at the data again. That's
it doesn't.
Just an empirical claim.
But they don't have. That is not the case with virgins. They do not. It does not show a lack of success, especially if the husband and the wife are virgins. Then it becomes even more successful.
Right, and then there's more issues with the methodology there in collecting that data. And it's not on the. I'm not saying it's on the fault of the researchers.
Yeah, but we
I'm
can't
just saying
quibble,
that it is one of those things that's hard to do.
We can't quibble over the methodology that we can't. We can't assess.
I'm a psych major.
That we can't assess. Hang on. That we can't assess right now. We can't quibble over the methodology because you don't know what the methodology is off the top of your head.
It gives me reason to be suspicious, and I think that you.
That's
would say
fine.
that.
You can have reason to be suspicious, but I'm just saying that the data itself at least isn't showing. You can quibble about the methodology of it, and you can say, here's what I don't like about it, here's what I do like about it. That's totally fair. But I didn't even present that argument to you. I'm just saying I'm taking that off the table because it's not provable or unprovable, at least for the purpose of the debate. Well, what we can at least logically demonstrate is that a good subset of people do hold the values of virtue and Christian ethics, and that this body count is an easy thing to ascertain, whereas other virtuous behavior is not immediately apparent. That one often is.
Of course it will.
So in other words, if you found the religion of Christianity, it is evident that all things, they don't go by the word, roughly, which you should go by the word, but also go by how the person carries on themselves, character-wise, and how they carry around you, that they can't assess if you have not lost your innocence, from what I'm getting at. Overall, my thing is this: if we talk about to not being deflowered, right? I like that word, deflowered, right? That you only go by, that assessment. But like I said, and I'll say this again, in this very over-sexualized society we live in, you're not going to know who is or who's not the flower. Unless, and even though some people could do say, well, go under the table and check if your hymen been, broken. It's too much work going into just for a man to invest so much time and energy to find if your woman's not been messing around, roughly, I mean, even I question if some dudes really want these women that don't look attractive, let's be honest, and they might look very awkward, that might not give up their box. They're not going to be so opposed to really put a ring on it. Because remember, we're talking about the male gaze here, and the more attractive the woman is very, very rare you can find her not giving up her pussy. And that's the honest truth. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just keeping real with you. I'm just keeping real. I'm going to let's run for like another 5-10 minutes, and we're going to call us today.
Well, I would actually reject that. I think that it's easier to ascertain information about people's virtuous status. Like, say they used to be a consistent liar. Say they used to be a consistent thief or something like that. Well, you can ascertain like, okay, well, they did this before they were religious. Maybe they have been a few years clean of doing this before they became religious. So you can ascertain that person probably is adhering to the values not only beforehand, but during this relationship. So that's what I'm saying that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't disagree with
I'm not
that
saying
point.
that do you think that what I'm saying is that religious people can't or should never take into account people's body count?
No.
Yeah,
I'm
not
saying that
committing myself to that.
I think that you're saying it's I just think that what you're doing is you're grading the impact of it lower than where it actually should be graded. So I think that it is something which is major, that is a portion of men's concern when it comes to Christianity, the body count of a woman. Other things that they could take into account would be children with other men. That would be another good one. Or, there's all sorts of various different things that could show that perhaps they're not exercising the virtue. If they have children out of wedlock, various things like this. On the other hand, you can make an argument, well, it's perhaps more virtuous in some ways because they kept a child and didn't abort it. Maybe that is in comport with the ethical system. But the body count itself, outside of marriage, easy one to point to because it's just always universally in basically every Christian denomination going to be considered non-virtuous behavior, right? It's going to be considered a violation of the ethical purview of Christians themselves. So it's an easy one to point to. And I haven't actually heard a refutation to that. Just, yeah, but there could be other factors you could point to as well. It's like, yeah, maybe, but I haven't heard why this one should actually be trivialized.
I'm not saying that it should be trivialized. And that's like, I think there's some Christian men, and probably a lot of them, who probably should value the people who have their similar ideals about intercourse with people. I think there are a lot of men who are Christian who should do that. And I think there's a lot of Muslim men who should do that. And I think I'm just saying that when the body count discussion is framed as this is an immediate disqualifier of somebody, I think that removes all of the nuance out of dating and relationships. And I think that one of the Christian values is to find nuance, find compassion for other people. And I think that you're exhibiting a virtue of compassion when you kind of look and say hey,
But for most men, I will say for the men, it will be disqualified if you have a certain amount of bodies on your repertoire. I think one particular stream by Jeff James and his good friend talking about, you could always tell by how she carries or even how she kind of feels or she kind of paused when you asked what's her body count, because a lot of women don't want to reveal those skeletons. They don't want to reveal their deepest sexual desires in front of you, because in their minds say, oh, if I tell him I had more than 3 bodies, he might not take me on as a potential mate for marriage or a long-term mate, but more for a fling in the bed. And that's a high possibility that might happen. But nonetheless, that's the risk most ladies going to willing to take. Now, there's always a man for you ladies that don't mind you been around the carousel. But in regards, the higher the scale you go and the more higher the male you're looking for, most males will put that into equation, depending on, if he's not that dude that, very possessive. All right, let's keep going.
I know everybody's history isn't perfect, but I want to get to know this person for who they are now, for who Christ has made them now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's virtuous on its own. And just to once, I'll say this, I don't think that there's nobody who should ever take body count into consideration. I just don't think for the average person, it should be the main focus of considering someone as a partner.
Okay, well then let's move from the Christian perspective just to the secular then. My argument from the secular perspective is that body count would also be a great indicator for you just based on revolt factor for preference. So most men, they find it revolting that women sleep with tons and tons of men, right? If they find it to be revolting and that's within their preference, there's nothing wrong with that, and they should select past it so that they're not trying to have a relationship with a woman that they're actually revolted by.
Yeah, I think for those men who it's like extremely revolting and there's no way to get around that for them, then they probably should. But I think there's a lot of men who if they had like relevant data about the types of relationships they could cultivate with people who have had higher body counts in the past, that they would probably, and by higher, I mean, we can put a number on that if you really want to, but I'm just talking about people in that like mid-range.
Do you think that if men had relevant data that they could have great and fantastic romantic homosexual relations with other men, that they would suddenly have a preference towards having a homosexual relationship, even if the data said that it would end well for them?
Some of them might lean more towards that.
Almost
yeah,
none. You really think that men would go, I'm totally straight and attracted to women, but now that I see that I could, have a bigger house and a pool if I become a homosexual, I'm going to suddenly start having gay. So you really think that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are people who do that. It's kind of like saying,
no, there are people. Most men would not go for that, right?
I didn't say most men.
I
didn't say most.
You did. I said, you think most men would go for that? And you were like, yeah.
No. I said that would lean most people more towards possibly developing a preference for that. So it's not that most men would in fact become gay. I didn't say that.
Or even engage in homosexuality. I mean, if they find homosexuality revolting, there's no amount of data that you're going to show them where they're like, oh, well, now that I see that I could get a bigger pool, the act of gay sex is less revolting to me, right?
I think, have you ever heard the phrase like $20 is $20? I mean, come on. I think people genuinely.
That's literally making fun of degenerates. Do you say that because it's making fun of degenerates?
You don't think there's actually people, I mean, there's a whole there's actually a wonderful sociologist, and I will shout out Dr. Jenny Stuber for doing a presentation on this. There are people who will go gay for pay. Yeah, absolutely. People are incentivized to do things when they realize that there's positive outcomes for them.
Yeah, there are some, I would never put it in a monolith, that there could be some men, like for instance in the adult porn industry, there's men who have, gays who are apparently straight, according to what they say, right?
Yeah.
They have to have fluffers though come in and get them to the point where they can do it, because they can't do it on their own, right? Because they have zero traction there. A lot of them even can find it revolting. Do I think that there are some men who would sell out for this? Sure. But that was never a dispute. Yeah. I'm just saying overwhelmingly, no, you're not going to be able to change men's mind by saying, well, this could be a positive romantic outlook that you now have, or you could have a wonderful life with a man of the same sex if you find it revolting. That's not going to change most of their minds.
Do you think most men are, at least
and I mean the overwhelming majority, I would say 99.9% or higher, you're not going to change their minds.
Sure. Do you think the overwhelming set of straight men are more adverse to like the thought of themselves having like homosexual intercourse than they are to like a woman with a slightly higher body count number than they prefer?
What the? Did this woman just say? First of all, no man, if they're sexualized in order, and I mean sexualized in order, will be concerned about or have the thought of engage in what they call homosexual intercourse or penetration of another man. Normally, if a man is focused on that, it means he, by default, might have been penetrated, unfortunately. So, to answer the question, most men, if they're really serious, yeah, body count for women does matter. He will ask question, or don't even ask question. It'll be implied by how you behave towards him. But most men out here not really focusing are really gonna pick homosexual intercourse out here, unless they're already about that life and they've already been penetrated and they like to be penetrated. So that right there is a weird question, but nonetheless, this is a very unusual conversation, debate. Really, let's go.
Yeah.
You think they're more adverse to the homosexual?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you take that into account with that, you're saying like, okay, well, look, yeah, they might be completely repulsed by the thought of having homosexual sex, but when they're given, other incentives to do so or more information about the facts of what it would cause for them, then they're more likely to do that, whether or not that amount is
Well, let me counter with this real quick.
No, I disagree. Anytime there's no negotiation or making anything to make a man sway, that it's okay for him to stick his phallus into another man's backside. No, absolutely not. And Andrew's going to destroy that right now.
Which would just be, I agree that there's a lower subset of men who are revolted by promiscuous women than are by gay sex. But within that subset of men who are revolted by women with a high body count, it's just as bad as the men who are completely revolted by gay sex. It would be the same thing.
You're saying the amount of men is lower?
Yeah, so
or
if you just say the amount of, isn't the amount of men who are repulsed by gay sex going to be higher than the amount of men who are repulsed by women with a high body count? It's like, but that really doesn't mean anything, because we're looking at the subset of men who they're equally repulsed, right? They're just, repulsion is repulsion.
I'm not actually convinced of that. I'm far more repulsed by the thought of like eating shit than I am at the thought of like eating pickles. And I'm saying like, oh, you're
you can have that trivially, right? And maybe I can concede a bit. Maybe I am quibbling a little bit. But what my point is that just because there's a larger subset who finds this to be repulsive with gay sex, there is a large subset of men who find it repulsive that women have a high body count. And I think it's higher than your aversion to pickles, and I think it's less high than the aversion to homosexual sex.
Right, but we can take a poll of the people in this room. Like, would you rather have sex with like a woman who has a high body count, or would you rather have sex with a man? And I think most of the people in this room would be like, I'd rather have sex with a woman with a high body count. So that's just evidence in favor of the hypothesis.
Yeah,
that,
but
they would.
But it's to the matter of degree. Like I said, it's higher than your aversion to pickles, right? But perhaps less high than homosexual sex. But the point remains that if they're repulsed by it, and that's within their preference, it seems a perfectly good argument to say it's not my preference, and then just avoid those women altogether because it's outside their preference.
Right, but just like the case with the virgins, what that does is when you say, I'm just averse to it, and like I said, I'm excluding these extreme cases of like aversion. I think that those people who have extreme aversion to this thing, that like the aversion can't really be manipulated or changed or, to have better outcomes, I think those people probably should. And that's the same thing that I would say. Like, I think people who have like a really strong preference against like eating pickles, those people probably shouldn't eat pickles, even though they really want to, have a bigger data set about what it might be like to eat pickles or something like that. So the point stands there is that I think there's far more men who would have, intercourse with a woman with a higher body count. I think that aversion can be manipulated so that their data set can be expanded and they can find happier relationships.
Would you apply that same logic to conversion therapy then?
To convert, in what way?
In the same way that if it is the case that they're opening up their experience to the fact that, they could see that their life would be far less stigmatized if they became heterosexuals or only engaged in heterosexual sex, and that they would have far better outcomes, that there's a lot of gay men who could be convinced, as it were, to do this thing that they found repulsive.
That's an empirical claim. So if you're asking me if
I need one final statement on the body
shit.
count question from each of you.
Oh, okay.
So-
Well, I'll just let you go ahead and end, and then I'll
Sure.
end.
Okay.
and then we'll do chats, then we'll do close.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I think in quite a bit of cases, I would be able to say that, for most people, it would be worth it to consider somebody with a higher body count than they have a preference for. I believe when you look at the preferences for body count amount, it's actually pretty low, and it probably falls into that lower end of the spectrum where you have like people who are like from the 1 to 3-ish range. And I think for those people, which I would say is the majority of people, they should open up the range to the kind of middle ground where people tend to have more successful relationships.
Yeah, well, I would just say that my opponent never actually made a really good claim for why men shouldn't care about this, only that there's a possibility that some men can be rehabilitated against their revulsion from a secular aspect. That, of course, that would bring up the can of worms of conversion therapy, right? Same thing when it came to the revulsion of homosexual sex. And then further, I would say from the Christian sense, she didn't really make any refutations at all, only saying that, yes, from the Christian angle, it seems that body count itself would be very important for somebody who is looking for virtue in a partner, and that she's not averse to that at all. So I don't really understand. I still don't really understand the position. I'm trying not to straw man it. I'm trying to steel man it, but I feel like that rendition of events is actually pretty accurate.
There might have to be a further conversation on that because there is still some confusion, but oh well.
Okay, yeah. We're going to let
Yeah, I don't know why she had to add homosexuality into this about body count, but it's typical for female effery that they want to defend being out here in the streets, throwing their box around to all groups of men, and just being and act like they're men, that they could just do the same thing, and then you cannot. Unfortunately, you cannot. Overall, this was a good conversation. I think by default, Andrew won this, like everything else he's done. I think she posed as an interesting candidate, but could have been better. But throwing those type of little curveballs with the homosexuality and the body count, I did not respect. Besides anything else throughout the whole conversation. But what's your thoughts on this, guys? Didn't get much commentary. I'm not sure I'm gonna do more of this. I think I might move on with other content. I'm still figuring out what I'm gonna do, but it is what it is. But if you feel indifferent, let me know in the comment section below this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and join my social media links. They're all in the description of every video. So I'll be reading the comments, if any, on that. Thank y'all for watching today's stream. And like I said, till next time, like literally next time. Come on. And I said, till next time. The chaos reign.
Chaos. They like the chaos.
They like the chaos. So when you're able to
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
Must reign.